Hey, it's GW rocking you live. Hey, it's Halloween season this month, and we're gonna count down just a bunch of favorite horror films of mine, and we're gonna start with my most favorite film of all time, horror-wise. We're looking at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre right here. This film was made in 1974 by Tobe Hooper, God rest his soul, and it was filmed in the 100 and plus degree heat in Texas. A lot of things are interesting about this film. Number one, you see the character, the main villain right there, Leatherface with the chainsaw. That was Tobe Hooper's idea of a killer. He went to a costume party in college, saw somebody wearing a cadaver's face around their own face, and then shortly after that had visions of somebody going nuts in a hardware store. Thus, Leatherface was born. This film actually is very creepy if you haven't seen it. It will continue to shock you, and it's also just recently been, taken off the ban list in Germany. So there's that. So let's get into this DVD real quick. This is what it has in it. Commentary by Tobe Hooper. This thing has a lot of independent actors, all of which are very good. You have Marilyn Burns, who plays Sally Hardesty, who's awesome, carries the film. You have Jim Sedow. He plays the Ed Gainish character. You have Gunnar Hansen. Gunnar Hansen is Leatherface. He will always be remembered as Leatherface, and he has passed away too. God rest his soul. Marilyn Burns, she's gone. God rest her soul too. She was actually in the remake, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D. She played on the other spectrum. Instead of being the heroine, she was one of the villainous clan. Very good actress. And you never heard anything from these people. They made this movie. They never got into trouble. And they were all pretty damn good actors. Couple things. This is the Dark Sky version. If you bought the DVD or saw the video, it was in 2.0 surround sound stereo, which means basically you got it out of your TV and it sounded like crap when you put it in your speakers. Dark Sky remixed this into a 5.1, so it's pretty cool. They actually made this. They actually retook the 8mm, 16mm, and made it high def. So it looks pretty awesome. So the look of the film is still grainy, but it looks slick. Now, you're looking at the bonus features here. Flesh Wounds, a documentary, that's about the makeup. The Shocking Truth of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre covers a little bit of the Ed Gein murders, which this was based off of, but also the shooting. Tour of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house with Gunnar Hansen. It's very interesting to see what the house is, but I don't believe the house is still there today. I'm not sure, but it's worth checking out. Let's see. Blooper reel. It's interesting. There you see scenes from the movie. And the one thing that I get all the time is when you say the words Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you think of bloodbath beyond your imagination. You think of pools of blood, dudes running in chainsaws, flesh dripping off chainsaws, but I gotta tell you, nothing can be further from the truth of what I just said, because this film literally has about 6 drops of blood in it. The thing that makes this film terrifying and I think stand out is that it can happen. And the way this thing was shot almost led you to believe that it was some sort of documentary. So there's that. There is a scene right, not in the beginning, but a little way into the film, while Sally Hardesty stumbles into this house that Leatherface and his clan own. She stumbles in a room made of bones. And it is one of the eeriest things you will ever see in your life. And those were real bones, from what I understand. There also is a book about this. If you watch this movie and you want to know how they put this together, there is a book that Gunnar Hansen wrote. And it's pretty cool. I've read it. I need to get a copy of it. But definitely check it out. It details the making of this. The film is about 4 or 5 teenagers, or a handful of teenagers, I should say. that go into Texas because they hear that their parents' grave has been messed with. They go check it out, and one by one they end up falling into the clutches of Leatherface. It's shocking. The other thing that's interesting to note is that when you look at the pictures there, look at the last one here. That's the hitchhiker. You'll notice him in the film. If you haven't seen it, very creepy, and it will definitely change your mind about picking up hitchhikers. The one thing, though, is cool is when he gets murdered, put the VCR, if you have a VCR or even a DVD player, put that thing on slow motion. Because dummies were not used. This was a cardboard box deal. You didn't hear it from me, but it's an interesting fact of the film. This film does contain a character called Franklin Hardesty, and his brother took revenge on these guys in the sequel. But before we get into the sequel, I just want to say this is a landmark picture. It's terrifying. It's based on Ed Gein. And even though it might be a little bit cheap or grainy looking, this film will definitely shock you. And like I told you, I don't know if it just got unbanned in Germany a few years ago because it's banned in several countries. The MPAA had a problem with this because anything with the words Texas Chainsaw and Massacre in the title pretty much summed it up that this was not family friendly, and they cracked down on these things. They did do a 4K version which fixed some of the issues when Leatherface cuts himself with a chainsaw when Sally Hardesty throws a wrench at him. The editing is really bad, but in the 4K version you do see the blood, so that indicates a wound, and just little touch-ups like that, but nothing major. The deleted scenes are pretty cool in this, but again, it doesn't add up to much. So definitely one of my favorite films of all time. And keep in mind, this was an independent picture. No studio really did this. Vortex bought this thing, and then Dark Sky later on sort of bought the rights to it. So with that in mind, we are going to move to the sequel. Alright. First thing you see here is Dennis Hopper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Commentary by Tobe Hooper. Tobe Hooper at this point had controlling, ownership over the characters. This film features Dennis Hopper. He plays Lefty Enright, brother of Franklin Enright, who was murdered in the first film. Lefty's whole main objective of this is to rid the entire world of these mass murderers and killers. The one thing too about this film is if the first one didn't have that much blood, this one goes over the rails in blood. It also interjects black comedy, which works, but then it doesn't work. The other cool addition is Chop Top. Chop Top is played by famed horror veteran Bill Moseley, who some of you know as Otis Driftwood from House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects. He also played the Santa Claus killer in Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, and he's also in a movie, believe it or not, with the dude who played Jason in a movie called Ambulance. Check it out. Kane Hodder, sorry. Anyway, this film picks up 10 years after the first film. It's pretty good. Like I said, Dennis Hopper goes after these guys. Film, predictable, starts out with two kids calling a radio DJ. They end up getting murdered. The DJ gets a hold of Lefty. And basically, these killers are in Texas, and now they're making worldwide chili. Award-winning chili, I'm sorry. The plot is basically they hack up kids at this, randomly to make chili, to win this thing. That's basically what the plot of the movie is. Chop Top's character is interesting because he carries around a dummy called Nubbins, and it's one of the most depraved things you'll ever see. The gore in this thing is kicked up tenfold. Seriously. Tom Savini did all the makeup effects and gore, and he was pretty good. The climax of this film takes place at an old battleground amusement park, and it's pretty cool. The other cool thing is if you're a fan of Star Wars and do like horror films, you'll dig the chainsaw battle between Leatherface and Lefty, and it reminds you of the Star Wars lightsaber battle between Luke and Darth Vader. I guess in 1985 or 86, whenever this thing was released. You know, it's pretty good. Let's see. 1986. I was right. Ha. Okay. Cutting room floor deleted scenes. There's one deleted scene in here that's pretty sweet. They end up hacking up a football team. It's pretty hilarious. Black comedy works, but it doesn't work. And again, none of the characters from the original were in this. And it kind of made it sound new, but again, you wanted something different after seeing this. It really wasn't the greatest entry into it, and it took it into a new direction. And believe it or not, they did make a third one, which is called Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Now, if you notice right up above, R-rated and unrated versions. Now, I told you the MPAA had a problem with this. This one sort of wanted to set the tone. It was hacked into an R-rated version and then re-released on unrated versions on Laserdisc and DVD, as well as home video. These things were around when videotapes were prevalent, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at the back, the one interesting feature of this movie that stands out is Viggo Mortensen, who went on to do better quality films in his acting career, is actually in this as one of the killers. And despite its depravity and despite the gore in this film, if you look at the house right there, that looks nothing like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house in the first one, which either tells me that these pack of killers have family we don't know about that was not addressed in the film, or B, nobody knows what happened. They threw another house up, unfamiliar with it, and the running time of the R-rated movies is 81 minutes, and the unrated feature is 86 minutes. That's because I believe in this film, in the very beginning, a girl gets killed, and she is hacked in half. You know, I think they cut that scene down as well as a few other ones. Let's see. Alternate ending. The Saw is family. That became a saying for these films. The Saw is family. That became like the mantra of this thing. Sorry, my camera works a little shaky. Other than the fact that the Cannibal Clan is a little bit fun to watch and Viggo Mortensen plays an all-out psycho, this film misses the mark and is probably declared the worst in the series, second to this one. Now, right there, you can see why this was probably deemed the worst film in the series, because Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey had made this thing and then shelved it for about a year. It was made in 1997, or was released in 1997, and it was shelved probably till 1997-98. Reason being is both of those mainstream actors thought it would hurt their reputation, and to tell you the truth, this is mildly entertaining. It's a throwback to the first one, and I see what Lionsgate was trying to do. But if you already seen the original, this film had a number of things that weren't in the original. Matthew McConaughey, though, plays an all-out psycho, and it is fun to watch him. There was no hitchhiker, and you knew what was going to happen. I mean, you knew. Leatherface was going to get him. One was going to escape. And the ending of this is probably one of the worst endings in history, because it alludes the fact that somebody had paid these guys to scare these people as well as kill them. So if that's the case, and that's what they were going to do, why not jump from Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and go with that storyline, that somebody was going to pay them? Not to mention Leatherface getting taken out by a plane, a little biplane. Come on. But it is fun to watch Matthew McConaughey lose it. That's all I got to say about this film. It's really not on my high list. In fact, Robert Jacks, the guy that plays Leatherface, was pretty good, but overall the performance was just not there. Neither was the extravagant gore that was in the second and third film. So they went back to the well on this one. New Line bought the rights off of Lionsgate, And what was created was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It was a Michael Bay production, and it was done by Marcus Nispel, who actually redid the Friday the 13th remake. This thing was a monster of a film. I saw it in the theaters with my wife, my girlfriend at that time. I thought it was a brilliant remake. They also added Arlie Emery, and they put Jessica Biel in as the lead heroine, as well as Eric Balfour. Some of you might remember him. You know, he was on Dawson's Creek, I believe. I'm not sure. This thing starts out with a bang. It makes the hitchhiker scene in the first film, the 74 one, look like a Charlie Brown cartoon. These guys take a detour while traveling the back roads of Texas and encounter a chainsaw-wielding maniac, Leatherface. Now, if you notice too, Leatherface is not dressed in any women's clothing. He doesn't have on fishnet thongs or whatever. He's a killer, ladies and gentlemen. He means business. Jessica Biel is in here, and it's, like I said, a Michael Bay film, and it's a hardcore film too. This thing, very gritty. Arlie Emery plays a great psycho in this film, and it's good to see him out of his Full Metal Jacket sort of acting that has trapped him for years. And Arlie Emery has passed away, ladies and gentlemen, and I gotta say, you know, God rest his soul. He was awesome in all of his acting that I've seen him in, and the guy was great. This actually, believe it or not, is the first DVD to contain Ed Gein documentary. Ed Gein is the person that I referenced in the first film, Serial Killer, so you can check this DVD out or get on the internet, check him out. The alternate ending to this is pretty sweet too. It alludes to the fact that after this film, Leatherface was still at the house, and he does a number on a couple of cops. Let's see. Nothing really crazy, although this is the way to go. This film, like I said, harkens back to the first film, and it actually kicks it up and adds adrenaline to it. Much needed adrenaline after a couple of the sequels that I just reviewed that didn't really need to be made. So you need to check this out. Like I said, New Line Cinema, Marcus Nispel, you know, Michael Bay film, very good. The only problem with this film is it's number 2 in an entry of 3. Now, I'm going to try to break this down. This is the second one. This is the first one. Now, what'll mess you up is that if you watch this film, you see the birth of Leatherface. It goes through his teenage years a little bit, and then it skips till he's a hulking maniac. However, the Jessica Biel version, he's already a hulking maniac. So that Jessica Biel one is, like I said, number 2. This one, very hardcore, very gory, very graphic. Very much needed, again, after the sequels that, and if you've seen them, then you know what I'm talking about. This, all I can say about this is, it really sets up the tone for the Jessica Biel version. So if you're going to watch this one first, but then you're not, because Lionsgate bought the rights again from this thing, and came up with this, Leatherface. This deals with Leatherface as a child, his dealings with an insane asylum, and how he becomes Leatherface. And longtime horror fans will note that Stephen Dorff is in this. Stephen Dorff was in a movie called The Gate. If you haven't checked that out, you need to check that out. He plays a cop in this film. This film was pretty much penned by critics, really not reviewed, and said it was the worst entry into the film. However, you will find that this is actually a very well standalone movie. The only problem with it is they should have done this version first, then the beginning, and then went to the Jessica Biel version in the timeline. Rumor has it they are making another one, and I really hope to God that they don't make it stupid, because if this thing could be turned into, 900 sequels, I'm tuning out, I'm telling you. And I love these films. I love the first one because of its, psychological, terror that it brings. And I love it because it was an independent film and it had spawned a ton of stuff. This one, it's pretty good. But if you're going to watch anything, I would watch this one and then the 74 one. Or you could watch the 74 one and gradually move into this one and then jump into these. Being that the films have fell into so many directors and so many, companies that really took it different directions in times, it's kind of hard to exactly know what to expect. But the two that I just showed you previous to this are pretty much, if you're a hardcore horror fan and you love gore, check those out. Then go back and revisit the two. Skip number 3, but 3 is a nice addition. Not a lot of special features to this. This came out earlier last year, and I don't know if Lionsgate has the rights to this. They seem to be buying up every horror property. They got this, they got Saw, they got a ton more stuff. But those are just, like I said, those are a few of my favorite horror films in the series. And like I said, the first film, classic. You cannot beat that. It stands up there with Halloween. And anytime you read about a horror, classic horror, that pops right up there. And Tobe Hooper, God rest his soul, did a hell of a job scaring the crap out of people. And that first film, if you went to see it in the theater, if you didn't walk out, that was crazy. That was unheard of, because millions of people walked out. They were afraid to eat meat, just like Jaws made people terrified of jumping in the water. But, watch that film and you'll see why it's a classic and it stands up. It's the psychological implications of this film. It's the idea that people could get impaled and chopped up. And hey, HDW, see you in Texas.